Greetings, friends. It is, flower o'clock, also known as 12/12, on 12/12. So isn't this precisely the right time to be speaking about the truth of the grand design, which, from what my ears hear, is that creation creates in 12s. You can see it here. Hexagons are the bestagons. We can see it here in this flower of life. And perhaps you can see 1 and 6 and 12 and 18. Flowers everywhere, 12ness in this beautiful code. And 12 here. These 12 phases of the moon, which happen 12 times in a year. Kind of. All right. So I just thought we could take advantage of this wonderful 12th month of the year, named for the number 10. And the 12th day of the 12th month, and the 12th minute of the 12th hour. And hopefully we're at the 12th second of the 12th minute of the 12th hour. So we can go and play. This is a little bit of a School of Earth Astrology pop-up jam here. And I hope you will enjoy as we explore 12ness through the sacred sciences of 4, the quadrivium, which is number itself, number in time, geometry. Actually, that's harmony. Number in space, geometry, and number in time and space, astronomy. Let's make sure this is on your screen. It looks like we are a go for launch. What's up, Vanessa and Punky and Melissa? Hey, Stargirl, it's nice to see you here live. All right, pop-up jam, away we go. Creation creates in 12s. I've been spending a lot of time recently with this beautiful image. This is an artist's rendition of the Dendera or the Zodiac of Dendera. Dendera being a place in Kemet, the land we now call Egypt, where we find the Temple of Hathor. And on the ceilings at the Temple of Hathor is this beautiful, ornate expressions of the Egyptian star wisdom tradition, but not Egyptian alone. In an upper room at that Temple of Hathor, we found proof of that in this. This is the so-called Dendera Zodiac. Now, the original Dendera Zodiac lives in the Louvre. And in Egypt, there's a really bad reproduction, but it was taken by the French many centuries ago. So if you're in Paris, visit the Louvre Museum and find your way to the Dendera Zodiac there. And if you're in Egypt, depending on the time, because it can be sketchy to get to, don't miss the opportunity to see the Temple of Hathor and to spend some time with the beautiful ceilings. I wish I had more images to show you, but really I just wanted to spend a bit of time with 12ness here in the Dendera Zodiac. This is kind of looking from the heavens view to Earth. I'm going to need to flip this around to have it agree with the zodiacs that you and I are used to seeing, because now we can highlight the ram and the bull, the twins here. Just want to say that the ram was not one of the 12 constellations of the Zodiac as seen by the Babylonians. They began in the Mula Pin with 17 or 18 star groups known to host the path of the moon. And the ram was not one of those 18, which later was kind of whittled down to 12 for the first 12 sign zodiac that we're aware of. what we know as the Ram constellation, stars of the Ram and stars of Triangulum above, were used to depict a being that in that tradition was known as the hireling. Some see it as the shepherd or the hired man. So the ram, interesting to see here in the temple of Dendera, the temple of Hathor, and in this Dendera Zodiac, because it would have come, either it was new or it came from Egypt, which would make sense. If you've studied the mysteries in Kemet, you'll see rams everywhere. And by the way, there's a very good reason that ram would fit the eastern sign, because the eastern sky rises like the horns of a ram, like a fountain of youth, especially if you're at the equator. When you look east from anywhere on Earth at the equator, stars that rise south of east just head south, and stars that rise north of east head north. And then, like the horns of the ram, they kind of hook around to set in the west behind you. In Kemet, well, it depends where you are in Egypt. I'll just speak for where I am. I'm at 38 degrees north of the equator in the Bay Area of California. It's the same as Athens, Greece. We have to tilt our head 38 degrees to see that same fountain of youth motion like that in the eastern sky. It's why I am sure ram's horns were aligned to the eastern sign. And by the way, this would therefore suggest that the constellations were developed to honor tropical astronomy. I don't want to go too far there right now. I just did want to honor that at this temple of Hathor in Dendera, in this Dendera Zodiac, we do see a ram, which we would not have seen in Babylon, at least in the early Babylonian zodiacs with which we are familiar. There's plenty of images here that definitely do come from the Babylonian set. And we know that, well, I guess I should say archaeologists suggest, and the astrology, I feel here at least, would confirm that these zodiacs found at the Temple of Hathor were created during the Hellenistic period, right? And so this is the Greeks had taken Egypt and the reign of the Ptolemies, right? Like these pharaohs who were actually Greek people. And then the Romans were there. Like, it's a strange time, right? Around when BC became AD, right? Around the turn of that millennia. But it was this melting pot in Egypt, and especially in Alexandria, right? And so star traditions from Babylon, from Greece, from India, from many other lands, they were all coming together, and it was upon this kind of melting pot, or in this melting pot, where so-called Western astrology really was born. I could do a better job sharing what I have learned about the history of astrology there, and there are many who could do a much better job than me. But if you've studied these things, I think it's just really interesting to reflect upon this Dendera Zodiac, because you see some images from Babylon, you see some images from Greece. If you look beneath the bull and the twins who are highlighted here, you'll see that pharaoh, right, with the crook and the staff. And that would be Orion, who in the Babylonian tradition was known as the true shepherd of Anu. So we don't get this kind of Greek hunter version here. Anyway, let's continue with the constellations that embrace the path of the sun, the ecliptic plane, the constellations that are the Zodiac 12. So we have the Cancer here shown as crab. Take that away so you can see it's actually not the crab at all, is it? It's the scarab beetle, right? So Kepharu. So that would be very Egyptian, yes? Then we get the lion here and priestess, right? You can see carrying in Greece we call it the shaft of wheat, right? What is that? Anyway, we get the scales, which is interesting to see as well. This kind of went back and forth between scales and claws around this time, depending on where on Earth and in which culture you were exploring the Zodiac 12 through. Here we see the scorpion. An incredibly Babylonian image of the archer here. Two heads, one looking forward, one looking back. In Babylon, you would actually often see two tails, which I'm not seeing here, the tail of the lion and the tail of a scorpion. But the winged and four-legged centaur, it's very much an image of the archer out of Babylon. We get the sea goat here as well. Some early zodiacs showed goat and some showed the sea goat, which also does go back to the Babylonian astrology. The water bearer was not Babylonian from what I understand. They had the great one shown as what we often see as the water bearer in the sky. So I'm wondering when the water bearer was first introduced. In Babylon, there weren't, at least in the Mula Pin, kind of the proto-zodiac, there was not the fishes. There was a fish and a dove tied together. That kind of came late after the fishes were seen more as like the two rivers, which would be the Tigris and the Euphrates, right? That square between the two fishes, or rectangle in this case, that's very much out of the Babylonian tradition, where what we now know as the Great Square of Pegasus was seen as the flood. Anyway, I wanted to highlight the zodiac constellations, and pretty familiar ones here, right? Ram, bull, twins, beetle instead of crab, lion, priestess, scales, scorpion, archer, sea goat, water bearer, and fishes. Now you see that they don't make a circle at all. And you can see that there are many other constellations indicated. Ophiuchus, interestingly, seems to be here. If you look, well, from our orientation of the disc, like beneath the Sagittarius and Scorpio glyphs, or let me say beneath the archer and the scorpion, the one that's seated on like the solar boat, and it looks like Horus or one of the Ra's, that would likely be indicative of Ophiuchus. I've been spending some time here in my explorations of Ophiuchus and Orion in our day and age. Is a very important thing happening with those two O's and their galactic gates, but that's not where I want to be right now. Except to tell, I guess, the truth that Ophiuchus is a beautiful, powerful, and super important mystical constellation, but definitely not some 13th sign. So we're going to speak a bit about 13 on our way to 12 for creation. Creates in 12s. Okay. Let's put these on a wheel where it's a nice circle from Earth's point of view. We experience the sun's journey as a circle. Really, we're experiencing an ellipse because the sun moves fastest through our zodiac when Earth moves fastest in our orbital path, and that, to use the modern time and Gregorian calendar that many of us do, happens around January 1st when Earth is at perihelion, close to Sun, or we could say Sun is at perigee, close to Earth. At that time, the sun is moving fastest through the zodiac, and it's slowest around July 4th. Let's say Capricorn fast, Cancer slow. But generally speaking, as we observe planets kind of traveling on the track, hardest to do this with the sun because we will go blind trying to track the stars that star of ours is shining from. But generally speaking, we're looking at apparent circular motion, right? We have to measure speed and such to honor the elliptical nature of orbits. And it's taken some time for that awareness to come in, even though the ancient astronomers, evidence of this all the way back to the Hellenistic period. Astronomers like Geminos, for example, were trying to tackle the weirdness of why seasons were not all of equal length. Like when you measure the days between equinox, solstice, equinox, that equinox, the next solstice, etc. They vary in length throughout the course of the year, and this is because Earth's elliptical orbit, but that was not known. Anyway, as we look at the dome of the heavens, we're seeing circles, friends. All right, so here we see the circle of the zodiac, and as you can see, I've taken the constellations away, so we can really just focus on this uniform 12ness, if you will. I'm just going to go back. We'll take some time today. Let's just honor as we look at this. And by the way, around the circumference of the disk, we see the 36, which is 3 12s, decans, the ancient Egyptian star traditions. Yeah, so these are, on one level, like the Sagittarius Capricorn cusp should be furthest from the center of this disk, because the center of the disk is the North Pole, or the North celestial pole. And the furthest south point of the zodiac is the Tropic of Capricorn, the Capricorn cusp between Sagittarius and Capricorn, right? But things are just placed in a pretty wonky way here, right? And very importantly, and it's not shown here as much as it is true, I could have brought in another image to reflect this, which you likely know, the constellations of the zodiac, those that host the path of the sun's travel, and for the most part that of the planets, because our solar system is relatively flat, the constellations of the zodiac vary significantly in size. So, I mean, like a really wonderful question is why 12? And why use even signs? Well, why create a zodiac in the first place? And the answer is to tell time, all right? And so to do this, like we want to use constellations for our guide. Like it's very powerful to get outside and see the moon shining from the horns of the bull, for example. Or I could say that about Jupiter now as I'm recording this in 12/12/24. But if we really want to track cycles, we're going to want some type of equal division of the wheel, right? Now, why divide into 12? So people will say like the zodiac's just arbitrary, like 12 is just some number you chose. I want to explore that with you a bit today. Some would say it's because there's 12 months in a year. But now we hear so often that there's actually 13. We're going to look at that, but I'm going to wait a bit. I will say that you can find 12 on your hands, right? You and I were taught we count in tens because 10 fingers in the human designs. Okay, 8 fingers and 2 thumbs to make the 10. Well, actually, if you honor that thumbs and fingers are different and you use your thumb as the counter, you can find triplicity and quadruplicity, right? So 4 threes are these 4 fingers that each have 3 pads. 3 fours. That could be seen in the other way. But it's the Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, right? And by the way, I can work with that to work the horizons and see equinoxes and solstices, and I could go on and on and on. But some have suggested that perhaps 12, and the reason why we find 12ness in so many different cultures in ancient timekeeping, like there were 12 hours in the day and 12 hours in the night in Egypt. This was also true in Babylon. This was also true in China. I mean, did they have a common teaching? Did that originate in one place and go from one to the next? Or is there something about creation creating in 12 and that somehow just becomes obvious when you play with the sacred sciences? I kind of suggest the last is true. You know, we can't deny the experience of time called day. The sun rises, reaches, rests, and roots, right? We can't deny the earthly experience of time called year, winter, spring, summer, and fall of it all. The month, there's many definitions, and we're going to take a peek at that a bit today. But if we look at a month that's described by lunar phase, that's maybe where 12ness comes through, because there's 12 months or 12 lunations in a year. The issue is there's 12.37. There's like 12 and a third. And those of you who keep a solely lunar calendar where you align your months to the phases of the moon have seen this challenge that 12 months is 354 days, which of course is not a year. So keeping solar lunar time and also recalibrating it or synchronizing it with the rhythms of Earth and Sun, which you should do if you like things like food, requires intercalary months, like leap months. And I don't want to spend so much time there. Anytime I start teaching that, it's like at least half an hour. And to do it right, it should be much more time with beautiful images. But just want you to honor that, like, 12ness and the equality of the signs in a zodiac, whether tropical, aligned to Earth's tropics and equator, and therefore to Earth's rotational axis, to the sword of our stone, to the spine of Gaia, to the world tree, which is this. Tropical zodiac is the Earth zodiac, or sidereal, where we pick a star and then divide the circle into 12 equal slices of 30 degrees each from there. There is a question about whether that number 12 was just completely arbitrary. I do, again, think it's fascinating that we see it in the timekeeping systems of many, many cultures. Like, I don't know any culture that was doing 10 hours a day. I'd love to find out. And by the way, 60 minutes in an hour, like, that's not nearly as old as 60 minutes in a degree. So go take a look at clocks and how it was back in the day and how that evolved over the time, from candles or sticks of incense to water clocks to the tick-tock of the design and the way that we see clock face now. Like, a lot of that is coming from the sundial, right? Okay. Anyway, typically you would see these systems of 12ness. And the hour, well, the day and the year are like undeniable. The month, there's many ways to look at months. The hour seems like a pretty arbitrary thing, right? Why make 24 hours in a day? Well, here on 12-12-24, we want to speak about the 12 hours of day and the 12 hours of night to make 24. And I'm not going to share everything I've learned about that. And I wish I could share all the things I will learn, because I find it to be a fascinating study. And I will be on that path, I'm sure, for a long, long time. I did just want to mention that it's a trip. And I think it's something we shouldn't take advantage of, or something that we should spend some time with that. Okay. And that 12, I don't believe is just some arbitrary thing. So at the beginning of the flow, I mentioned the 4 sacred sciences known as the quadrivium of number itself. They called that arithmetic, number in time, harmony, number in space, geometry, and number in space and time, astronomy. And I think we can find the beauty of 12ness in all of these things. And today I will focus on number in space, geometry. And I love how this Dendera zodiac shows us 4ness, 8ness, and 12ness. So as I take the constellations away, now we're just looking at all of this symmetry. Some of the things that are asymmetrical, like, then become particularly interesting to me here. And I would love, actually, to, and I plan to, I haven't yet, to read some translations of the hieroglyphs that we see. But what we definitely see is these 4 goddesses, or let's say 4 women, I don't know, and 8 dudes. Those wearing falcon or hawk head, like Horus, right? Heru. There's other images where we get to find that. But you can see clearly like the 4 directions, or let's say the 4 cardinal directions. And cardinal signs have everything to do with cardinal directions, friends, if you're utilizing a tropical zodiac. The spine of Gaia, the sword of our stone, the world tree of Earth is our rotational axis. It leans north in every moment forever and ever towards 0 tropical Cancer. And the south point is 0 tropical Capricorn. So cardinal south, cardinal Capricorn. Because there's a global north and a global south, there are also global east and west. Cardinal east is cardinal Aries. Cardinal west is cardinal Libra, which is why Libra is not just the scales, it's the sun setting into the horizon. We had images of that from Kemet, especially when you look to the river. That was the Ankh. And so I love how we get to see 12 holding the wheel here. And how they're separated into what I'll just call mutable cardinal pairs, with the fixed sign standing alone. Right? Because when I say cardinal east is cardinal Aries, really the point that's due east of the center of Earth, not of California or New York or Timbuktu, like we have different easts in this moment, but Earth has a north, that's her pole, right? That's her rotational axis. And therefore Earth, the whole of Earth, the center of Earth has an east, and that's the Pisces-Aries cusp. So it's really appropriate to draw that with 2 beings instead of 1, right? So the Dendera zodiac, you get this really beautiful expression of 12 and 8, right? So 4 as 8, right? So the cardinal direction showing us like the Pisces-Aries cusp. That's east. Earth north is the Gemini Cancer cusp, like the northern extreme of the sun's path is the Tropic of Cancer, right? 0 Cancer is the Gemini Cancer cusp. Earth west, the Virgo Libra cusp. Earth south, the Sagittarius Capricorn cusp, right? And then I'll call them goddesses either way. In between, these would be like the cross quarters. If we're using a system where the seasons shift at equinox and solstice, right, which is very clear to see in tropical astrology, as we know. If you want to do this in a sidereal zodiac or a constellational zodiac, you're going to need to do some math. The tropical zodiac, of course, when the sun ingresses Aries, we know it's equinox time. When the sun ingresses Cancer, we know it's solstice time, right? Keeping the year, there's just there's no calendar that is more elegant to keep the tropical year, the solar year, than the tropical zodiac. And they're not equal divisions of time. The sunths, as I call them, the sun moving through a sign, again, because Earth's orbit, like all orbits, is not circular, but rather elliptical. But the sunths, the sun moving through a sign, are equal divisions of space. 30 degrees, a 12th part of the circle, right? All right, so of course, between equinox and solstice, or between solstice and equinox, we get the cross quarters, right? And in the tropical zodiac, that's like 15 Taurus, 15 Leo, 15 Scorpio, 15 Aquarius, these points where the nature of the season is most fully fixed in, right? These center points of the fixed signs. Now, there's some other traditions that would work the seasons between cross quarters. So you can go from like Beltane to Lammas and Lammas to Samhain and Samhain to Imbolc, to use those terms. And then, of course, the equinox and solstice points would be like the midpoints of those particular seasons. If, by the way, you were working astronomically, not calendrically, and meaning, for example, that Lammas would not be August 1st, but would rather be the sun at 15 degrees tropical Leo, which, if you go Gregorian, happens each year around 8/8. Yeah, I'm not going to say the rest. That's a different video on the page. Okay. So 12ness, friends, the 12-spoked wheel, and seeing it beautifully way, way back in the border of the Dendera Zodiac. We're going to build a Zodiac together. We're going to build this 12-spoked wheel. And why don't we start with the 1, the circle of spirit. Now I'm actually going to jump straight from here on a plane to show you the kissing numbers. So in 2 dimensions, you're on a plane. 7 is the kissing number. What does that mean? Well, picture tells 1,000 words, right? And 1,000 worlds at that. But as you can see, we have 7 circles. They're all of the same diameter, and they all kiss. Really, they're all kissing their neighbors, right? And the center circle's getting kissed by 6. And it is that, as you can clearly see, 6 around 1. So if you take 7 uniform circles, like 7 nickels or 7 quarters, right? And you'll find that you can do this. You can kiss 6 around the 1, right? So on plane, 7 is the kissing number. 3-dimensionally, the kissing number is 13. So these are spheres, right? And you can orient 12 spheres of the same diameter around an inner sphere. So the 12 and the 1, the 13. Now, very importantly, that 13 is 12 around 1. All right, as promised, the 13 moons in a year. You hear this so often, and I get really triggered by it, so please forgive the angst that you'll hear us speak about this some. There are many types of months. The 2 most known when we think of month outside of something of the calendar. I mean, let's even go there. I like to call them, like in a solar calendar, like the Gregorian calendar, sunths. And that's really more indicated by just the 12-spoked wheel. Because as I shared before, like the sun moving through a tropical sign, that's not an equal division of time, it's an equal division of space, but we can calculate the average. So if you take the solar year, which is 365 and about a quarter days, and divide it by the 12 equal signs of the 12-spoked wheel. So in other words, what's the average time it takes for the sun to move through a 30-degree sign? The answer is 30.44 days. So can you see why you would create a calendar that alternates between months of 30 and 31? What's the average of 30 and 31? Of course, it's 30 and a half, right? 30.5, really close to that 30.44. So alternating between 31 and 30 won't do it. You would get a number that's a little bit too much. So you got to do some other kung fu, like have one of your months be 29, right? So, but why is it 28? Because you needed another one to be 31, because something about July for Julius and August for Augustus. And I could go on and on and on. I just want you to know that alternating between 30 and 31, it's not just random. It's not just, as we're so often told by the new cage, like some patriarchal design to keep us out of balance and harmony and to destroy the true 13 moon calendar that all indigenous people use. I'm speaking in this way. I'm sorry if it offends, but I just can't tell you how often I come across some social media post or book that tells me that the trip was that the patriarchy came in and just destroyed the true 13 moon calendar. Okay. Well, typically people who say this will either argue for 28-day months. 13 times 28 is 364 days. Well, that's not a year anyway. And the moon just doesn't 28. The closest lunar period to 28, you can see at the very bottom of this list, it's called the anomalistic moon. All orbital paths are elliptical. If we, instead of speak of the reality of moon and earth dancing about each other as they dance about the sun, and just use the model that we were taught in school, and it can work, as moon about the earth, right? That's not a circle, it's an ellipse. And every month the moon gets close to Earth and far away. We can track that in the chart, by the way, of moon's conjunctions with true black moon Lilith. That's the apogee. That's the far small moon, slow moon, or moon opposite true black moon Lilith. That's the perigee, moon close to Earth, big moon, super moon, brighter moon, faster moon, larger moon. I guess larger and bigger are the same thing. I feel like I'm missing one. Anyway, that's the anomalistic month, the month of the anomaly, and it's 27.55 days on average. All of these things are on average, and there's more decimal points to find. Check out the Wikipedia page on month. It's pretty good. So if you're looking at anomalistic months, it's the closest you can get to that 28-day period, which, those who believe a month is 4 weeks, like the makers of the pill, it's the closest you can get in actual astronomy, the anomalistic month. Well, there's 13 and a quarter of those in a year. There's about 13 and a half draconic months. If this is the path of the sun, well, every month the moon snakes above and below the path of the sun, crossing at the dragon's head and the serpent's tail, right? And diverging about 5 degrees north and 5 degrees south every month at the bendings, right? So the draconic month would be moon on her path crossing the ecliptic, like north, at north node, back to the next north crossing, or the south to the south crossing. And that's like 27.21 days. And there's almost 13 and a half of those in a year. But nobody's tracking those. Like astronomically, we can with charts very easily, which is so wonderful. If not, I don't know that any of us would ever have heard about them. And maybe this might even be your introduction to the draconic or the anomalistic months right now. Sidereal months are something we see, like moon at the Pleiades, back to moon at the Pleiades. That's sidereal, it's of the stars, or moon Regulus to moon Regulus. That's a period of about 27.321 days. And there's about 13 and a third of those in a year. So if you're just looking at moon through the lunar mansions, moon through the stars, that is 27 and a third days, and it's 13 of those in a year. There's really more, 13 and a third, right? By the way, if you're just looking at consecutive lunar returns on a chart, like moon to 0 degrees Aries, or I was born with moon at 2501 tropical Gemini, it's how I always track when moon gets back to that tropical degree. That's a tropical month. It's also 27.321 days. Synodic is the month that most of us feel. The astronomy of a month is best reflected by, which is the moon reflecting sunlight to our earthly eyes, right? So lunar phases. And I'm like, when I felt this, I feel it as attack. I shouldn't, but it's the patriarchy that destroyed the true 13 moon calendar with this inharmonic 12-month thing. Most of these people, when I ask them, okay, well, what is a month supposed to be? They'll say the phases of the moon. All right, well, that's 29.53059 days on average, but just check it. And that's why all the old lunar calendars, and many that are still utilized, alternate between months of 30 and 29 days to get that 29.5 day pace. There's much other kung fu you have to do along the way because it's not exactly 29.5. And then you need intercalary months to synchronize it with Earth and Sun, the seasons, if you like things like survival, which necessitates, for most of us or anyone that I've met, food, All right. And you'll see that there's not 12 of those in a year. So this little bit of our jam today is here to help you know that there are not 13 moons in a year. Like, a fun truth is most years, if they have like calendar years, if you go January 1st, January 1st, or maybe you prefer the Aries equinox to the Aries equinox, or the Capricorn solstice to the Capricorn solstice, you do you. Maybe you'll just do your solar return, your birthday to your birthday the next year. Yes, do you, right? Typically in that period of 365 and about a quarter days, if there's 12 new moons, there'll be 13 full moons. Or if there are 13 new moons, there'll be 12 full moons. It doesn't really always work like that. But check it out. Spend some time with it. And be really careful not to just fall for any "this is the real astronomy" message you find online, including this one. Do your own research, friends. And these days we have these wonderful charts that can really help us out. All right, let's continue. This is me just wanting to spend a little time hoping to prove to you that I'm not some triskaidekaphobe. I actually love and embrace the number 13, as weird as it is. I'm not saying that Friday the 13th is the worst day of the world, although there were some Templars had a tricky time on that day some many centuries ago. Some say that on Friday the 13th, the truest ritual should be lock the doors and make some love. Well, maybe don't lock the doors. That's not too loving, is it? Why? Because Friday is Venus's day, and 13 is a number of the goddess. Because 13 moons in a year, right? No. Although, importantly, we do definitely find 13 in the lunar dance because the moon moves on average 13 1/3 degrees per day. And 1/3 looks like 13 the way that you and I write it. I should just speak for me. And it's not exactly 13 1/3, by the way. But this is why many systems of lunar mansion traditions, like some of I think the most popular nakshatra tradition, will have 27 nakshatras or lunar mansions that are all 13 1/3 degrees. Because that's the average, certainly not the daily movement of the moon through the zodiac, the average, right? Sometimes the moon's fast and moves further, sometimes slow every month and moves less. But generally speaking, 24-hour period of the moon is on average expressed by the moon moving 13 1/3 degrees through the zodiac, right? Some other lunar mansion traditions, because moon gets around the stars, not in 27 days, but in 27.32 days. They'll use a system of 28, where 27 are like 13 degrees, well, more, and then the 28th is a smaller one, right? Because it's more like 27 and a 0.3. Anyway, go dig into that. That's a beautiful thing to behold as well. Okay, I'm not a triskaidekaphobe. We do find 13 in the average daily movement of the moon. I should say that, on average, the sun is moving 1 degree per day. So what's the change between the moon and the sun each day? 13 minus 1, 12. Okay. What are we showing here? And this one, thanks to Jane, this beautiful image of the Fibonacci. Well, not the Fibonacci sequence, but we could say the Fibonacci number, the golden number phi. 1.61803398874989484848820. What up? 4848. There was almost repetition But no, it won't be so, because like pi, phi is a number that's transcendental. It's endless from what we can tell, and there's no repetition or anything. It just goes on and on and on. And it's the golden number that so beautifully is the expression of nature. And, speaking of goddess, this is in the Venus cycle, right? 8 Earth years are almost exactly equivalent to 13 Venus years. 8 Earth orbits, 13 Venus orbits. So Venus and Earth, they draw a double pentacle about the sun during the course of 8 Earth years and 13 Venus years. And the golden ratio phi is encoded within these Fibonacci numbers, 5, 8, 13. Where's the 5 come from? It comes from the sacred pentacle traced by Venus and sun in Earth's sky, right? So for the sun, we can get Venus-Earth conjunctions and Venus-Earth oppositions. From Earth's point of view, we get interior Venus-Sun conjunctions and exterior Venus-Sun conjunctions. And over the course of the 8-year period, which is 13 Venus years, Venus and Sun draw a very near regular pentacle or 5-pointed star in Earth's zodiac. And by the way, that would be true whether you use the 12-sign zodiac or 10 or 18 or 24 or whatever. 13. Be a little harder to calculate in the 13 sign zodiac because you can't divide a circle equally by 13. That's something to consider as well. 12 is the first abundant number. Look it up. And 360 is abundant, while 365 is not. All right. So the Venus star itself very slowly retrogrades through Earth's zodiac. It takes about 1,250 years for one star point to move from where it is now to where another one is. That's a wonderful thing to behold. But I just want to honor that there is 13 in Venus as well. 13 Earth years equaling 13 Venus years, 8 Earth years. And from Earth's point of view, Venus and Sun make 5 kisses during those 8 Earth years, 13 Venus years. Also, as this star of Venus, let me see if I can do that again, moves through the zodiac, one of the star points typically will have 13 cycles in one sign. So for example, right now we're in what I call a Leo Gemini cycle. Let me just call it a Leo cycle. Or let me say this, in March of 2025, Venus and Sun will conjoin, retrograde Venus will conjoin Sun in the very early degrees of tropical Aries. That will happen again 8 years after, in 2033. But 8 years after that, in 2041, the retrograde Venus-Sun conjunction will not be in Aries. It will be in Pisces. And I'm not exactly sure if that will be after 13 Aries conjunctions. I can't wait to go and look. Actually, you know what? We have the things we need to do this. So let's go find out. Venus conjunct Sun. This is the one I'm talking about. I'm going to put this on a so-called natural zodiac or zero Aries wheel. And let's only look at Venus and the Sun to make this a little bit easier on us. I'll keep the moon in because we're talking goddess stuff. How did Mercury and Mars get in there? Anyway, inners. I want Inanna. There. Okay. I'm going to go back in time and we just do 8 years, which are 13 Venus years. And 8 years before this Venus-Sun conjunction in Aries in 2025, we'll have an Aries conjunction in 2017, or we did. So there's that one. 8 years before then, in 2009. 8 years before then, in 2001. And you know what? I'm just going to do something like that. Oh wait, here's it. It's in Taurus. So I need this to become Aries. 3 of those. Okay, so this was the first one in Aries in kind of recent times, 1929. Why do I say it's the first one when it's in the last degree? Because these things retrograde through the zodiac. So what I want to see is how many Aries before it moves into Pisces. And I'm also interested in seeing like how long it takes to get from this last degree of Aries to the last degree of Pisces. So we're just going to bookmark 1929 in our minds. And we're going to say 1, 2, 3. You'll see it moves about 2 degrees in 2 calendar days each 8 years. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, so there's going to be 14. Cool. I want to just make sure I did that right. So 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, there's 14 in the sign. I thought they would be 13 or 12. Okay, and then also 1929. Let's go here. So for it to move 30 degrees, or it was more like 31 and a half, 1929 to 2041. So let's let the computer do that for us. 112 years. Fascinating. Okay, sorry, friends. I need to explore. Oh, I'm just realizing I guess I didn't have the chart shared on my screen as I was saying all that. That was boring. While we're here, I love that people know their Venus star point. Read this too. I am born with Venus retrograde and conjunct to Saturn in Aries with Sun in Aries during eclipse. This topic's important to me. Right on. Venus retrograde, the very transformational, amazing point of her cycle. I will suggest that you are likely belonging to both a Leo and an Aries cycle, or a Virgo and an Aries cycle. It's kind of like a long story. But let's tune into that together sometime if you'd like. And by the way, I guess this would be the right time to not only say, hey, if you dig the jam, please like the video, share it around, do the things. And you can also book a session with me at geminibrett.com/sessions if you'd like to support the work. Okay, well, anyway, sorry for that sideshow, but it's something I've been wanting to look at for some time, and it's at least starting for me. There's much more to explore, but it would seem that Venus will either, in the slow retrogradation of the star through our zodiac, do 13 star points in one sign, or 14. I knew 13 to be true, and I just wanted to point that out as another image of 13 and the goddess, if that's where you want to go with Venus, and I do. But I figured it would be 13 or 12, and it looks like 13 or 14. 12 might be another option, and I just got to spend some time, and I should have done my research before taking your time with it. I guess Venus isn't only for ladies. Let me just share this, like the pentacle that you see here. It's just helping to remind us that we have this pentacle sacred number in us. It's in Earth and nature, including the spiral of a galaxy and the spiral of our ear, the spiral shape that the fetus takes. in this golden number. I'm sure it is something that you've explored. And why 13 lives in it, and 5 as well, is they're pentagonal numbers. Now it gets more interesting as we get much further along the Fibonacci sequence, which, you start with 1 and then the other one. The way I describe those is I am one thee, who is a unique reflection of the one. So there's actually two ones, self and spirit, the all, right? And my personal experience, a reflection of it. You are a one, but we're only the one. You see, 1, 1. And then you add the previous two numbers to get to the next. So 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13. 13 plus 8 is 21, right? So in this equation you're seeing on the right where we estimate the golden number phi through divisions or ratios of consecutive numbers of the so-called Fibonacci sequence, the next would be 21 over 13. And then 13 plus 21 is 34. So we do 34 over 21, and then 55 over 34, and then like that, right? 89 over 55, 144 over 89. That's just the Fibonacci sequence numbers. The higher you go, the closer it approximates the golden number phi, which can only ever be approximated. More Fibonacci numbers at the top of your screen now: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 55, 89, 144, 233. It's a fun little bit. 377, and on we go, right? Interestingly, the first 5 numbers of the series sum to 12. Astrologers like 12. 12 spheres around 1. The 13 is 12 and 1. I hear some like these modern 13 sign Ophiuchian folks saying, you see, the sacred code tells us that 13 is the one in the center of the 12. So 13 signs. It's like, no, 12 around 1. So there's no 13th on the circle. You're taking away the mystery of that line, actually. You're bending it to fit your need. Anyway, the kissing numbers of 13, so beautiful. But please remember it's 13 around 1. If you believe 0 is a thing, then it's actually the first 6 numbers of the Fibonacci sequence, which sum to 12. Okay? 6. Great. Because here's the 6 around 1 to make 7. I wish I got here more quickly, because this is the place I really want to play mostly with you today. And we are going to as above, so below, and then move along the intersections to create the seed of life. 6 circles of the same diameter stitched about an inner circle. This pattern that these days most of us know as the seed of life, which is found all around the globe throughout different cultures, different ages, because it's just what circles do. In fact, I would suggest it's what the universe does. In my heart, this is how the universe breathes. Four times for the directions. We'll take a 5th breath, maybe a bigger breath here. This is the image of 12 around 1, which is a beautiful thing. But how does that feel compared to the other image we were looking at here? Well, this is one that I'm sure you've seen many more times in your life. And frankly, we can get to 12 from 6. This is the key to the seed of life. The seed of life is the key to the Zodiac. And such a beautiful reminder from the sacred study of number in space, which is geometry, that creation creates in 12s. So as you can see, there is a 6-petaled flower within the inner circle, and a 6-petaled flower without the inner circle. Inner, outer. 2 6-petaled flowers, which are regular hexagons, so that their petals are phased from one another by a sextile, 60 degrees. And that the two flowers themselves, the inner lunar flower or nocturnal flower and the outer solar or diurnal flower, are phased to one another by 30 degrees, right? This is the, if you want to get cheeky, and I do, the sixes and the sexes, the inner yin and the outer yang signs of the zodiac, right? Polarity. Now I can fill in these other geometries in this seed of life pattern, and you actually get 24. So the way I have them colored here is 6 silver and 6 gold. That's the zodiac. But we also see the spaces, so 6 green and 6 red. I wonder sometimes if this is where the 24 comes from. Like 12 I get. Creation creates in 12s. But why 12 hours of the day and 12 hours of the night? Why not just 12 hours a day? 6 hours a day, 6 hours a night. Like that works better. I wonder if somebody was so beautifully obsessed with this that they wanted to go 24. That might be one place where it comes from. Like if you look at your Chinese calendar studies, you'll see that there's 24 solar terms each year, beginning with the time each year that Western tropical astrologers would describe as the sun at 15 degrees tropical Aquarius, or at that cross quarter. Why 24 from there, and 24 in these 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night, which actually came from several different systems? Like, why? Because again, that's not like, that's an arbitrary thing. That there's 365 and about a quarter days in a year, that's just in no way arbitrary. That there's about 29 and a half days in a lunation, new moon to new moon, that's just how it is. At least during our age of incarnation here on Earth. But why 24? Why an hour? Why 60 minutes? Like, these are really beautiful mystery questions. And some of that now, it's like, well, that's just the tradition. Okay, but why? Where did it come from? So here's one beautiful and interesting way to get to 24. Let's get to 12 again. And what about 2? The way I like to draw the 12-spoked wheel, which is the zodiac, is to create an octave circle around the seed of life. And I just showed you how to do so. Here, I'll show you again. Because truthfully, I could just draw lines through those inner petals and through the outer petals, and I would have divided that inner circle into a 12-spoked wheel. But I like to do it by first finding the tangent of the entire seed of life, which is right there. So as you can see, we just draw a line from the center through an inner petal, or we could draw a longer line through any of the opposite inner petals of the inner 6-petaled flower. And then we find the tangent, the furthest extreme from the center in this seed of life design. Well, we can now create a circle using that radius. And the reason why I call this an octave circle is because its diameter is twice the diameter of the inner circle. And frankly, all the other circles, right? This is 6 circles around one. They all have the same radius. They all have the same diameter, right? The radius of this outer circle is equal to the diameter of the other circles, as you can just see right there, right? And why do I call that octave? Because in number in time, in our sister science of harmony, the octave, as we call it. Why do we call it the octave? 8. That's weird. And the reason why is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, 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 chestnuts roasting on it somewhere over that octave distance in what we call a diatonic scale, or you might notice the major scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. There's 8 notes in that scale, or really 8 steps, because there's 7 notes, with the octave being, the next harmonic of the note where we began. Do, 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 do. It's the same note and it's different, which is a wonderful thing. And if you're familiar with Plato, you might be familiar with terms like the different and the same. Anyway, the first harmonic is the fundamental do, right? The second harmonic is we take that vibration and we cut it in, we double it. So why did I say cut it? Because if you're thinking of this as like a vibrating string, like a guitar string, when you pinch it in half, now the wave is moving twice as fast because it's moving half the distance. And that sound of half of the string will be the octave, twice the frequency of the sound of the entire vibrating string. Somewhere, right? And so I call this the octave circle because its diameter is twice that of the inner circle, or frankly, all 7 of the inner circles now, which are 6 about 1. Okay. Anyway, I like to create my 12-spoked wheel in this way because it also gives me the opportunity to honor this most beautiful expression of polarity, right? Yin and yang, or day and night. So the way that I see the zodiac here is the silver petaled flower, the inner flower being the earth and the water signs, involutionary down and in, the outer petal colored solar because the up and out, the evolutionary signs, air and fire, right? And then that the white and the black would be like light and darkness. So, I mean, that's more beautifully expressed through just the flat line for the horizon. The sun above the horizon is day, the sun below the horizon is night. But here we get that flow, which is showing us that primary motion of the sun through the houses each day. And we also have light, of course, before sunrise and darkness before sunsets. I mean, given that truth, I might even like turn this thing a bit so the light's happening, even further in time before the sun gets to the horizon. In fact, I believe this is why the 2nd and the 8th houses in one of the traditions were known as the gates of Hades. One, the sun is heading for the underworld, and in the other, the 2nd, the sun is coming back from the underworld journey. Things to consider. All right, so our 12-spoked wheel. Just draw lines through the inner petal and lines through the outer flower. And this is something I really, 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 really recommend you do at home often, or anywhere you are. This is the birth of the zodiac. And by the way, you can't do this in 13. You can kind of do this in 10, but trust me when I say, or actually don't, go play. It's very difficult to do if you only use the 2 geometer's tools, sacred geometer's tools, which are the compass and the rule. When you play with compass and rule, the seed of life is just such a natural creation. And they say in the tradition that when you put the compass in your hand, you become God, which is a really heavy thing to say, right? But the reason why I feel like it shouldn't be cast aside is because geometry, it's the study of creation through the act of creating. And it really just helps you get in touch. This more than the other sciences of the sacred systems, astronomy, where we have 12-ish months in a year, harmony, which we'll look at just very briefly. It's the geometry that most clearly and certainly most precisely expresses what I know to be the truth in my heart now, that creation creates in 12s. Dawn, I'm not sure if you're here right now, but I really appreciate you sending me that channeled talk by Cryon, right, in his Earth Address, I think maybe it's called, for this year. He was speaking about how AI is not Terminator. It's not going to take us out. In fact, it's going to help heal our illnesses and help bring us to the stars and help us translate the languages of those who come from very far. But the reason why this was sent to me, I'm sure, is because Cryon was saying this is why he encourages humans to create AI not using base 10 numbers, which I think we're all counting in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right? Like that's base 10, but rather to use base 12 because that is the numbering system of the universe. And I couldn't agree more, although I got to say I've been trying to base 12 a little bit. Like in base 12, there's 260 degrees in a circle. That's crazy. It's like, it's so hard for me to wrap my head around. I'm encouraging myself to continue trying and to see if I can get anywhere that's worth sharing. Like if I can make it easy enough to share a thing or two that I found along the way. Ryan says in this talk, and I haven't verified if this is true, and I'm not sure how I could, but maybe my adventure will lead me here, that pi is not an irrational number when viewed through the eyes of base 12 mathematics. I don't know that that's true. I can't wait to verify. If anybody knows where to point me in that quest, please do. I would not mind some acceleration to the pot of gold at the end of that weird 12 branched rainbow. All right. Anyway, the 12-spoked wheel of life. I really encourage you to draw in the quincunx star here. So, to speak astrologically, let's do it again. Quincunxes. It's like let's think of it like a natural zodiac. So 0 Aries is on the left and 0 Libra on the right, 0 Capricorn at the top, right? This would be like, Aries, Virgo, Aquarius, Cancer, Sagittarius, Taurus, Libra, Pisces, Leo, Capricorn, Gemini, Scorpio, Aries, right? Quincunx star. Such a beautiful pattern, this. I've been spending just a lot of time falling into this pattern because you can see in here our triangles, our sets of 3 signs that make quadruplicities triplicities, right? 3 signs. So the earth signs, the water signs, the air signs, the fire signs. We don't usually learn them in that order. That's a discussion of density. So we can just honor that 2 of these go down and in and 2 go up and out. You can also see in the quincunx star, these squares, quadruplicities, we'll call them cardinal, fixed, and mutable signs. Beautiful. Do that with 13s. It's funny, like there's places online where you can cache your 13 sign chart and they all have 12 houses. They're all using squares and trines, it's like, anyway, the 12-spoked wheel of order rolls around and around the sky and never ages. This, from what I understand, is the oldest scripture known, the Rig Veda. 12 spokes. All right. Well, it happens in music as well. The music is more precise than the astronomy. Okay. Well, when I say that, I mean that if 12ness, like a 12-spoked wheel, a 12-sign zodiac, is coming from the 12 moons in a year, it's not that precise because if we're looking at phases of the moon, as we saw, there's 12.37 lunations in the average year. And 12.37 is not 12. It's certainly not 13. It's closer to 12. I should say the way that works, if you rock a lunar calendar, a lunar phase calendar, and you're alternating between months of 30 days and 29 to keep the 29.5-day pace of the lunation, you end up having a 354-day year. We call it the silver year. And you have to add a leap month about every 3 years. Obviously, 354 days is 11 shy of a 365-day year, or 12 shy of a 366-day leap year. And so after 3 years, that distance of 11, that difference of 11 adds up to 33. So you have to add a leap month there. But you can't just throw in a 33-day month. It either has to be 30 or 29. So you can keep the alternation between 30 and 29 to honor that 29.5-day pace, right? Not the wrong slide for this because it is about rhythm. What ends up happening, and it's beautiful, you're not adding a leap month every 3 years. You add 7 over the course of 19 years. And so what ends up happening in the 19-year so-called metonic cycle, though, that cycle of 19 years, which is almost exactly equal to 235 lunations, those cycles, those wheels within wheels, that synchronization of gold, earth, sun, solar years, seasons, and silver, earth, moon, sun, phases, lunations, that synchronization every 19 years, which is almost exactly equal to 235 lunations. What ends up happening is in that 19, which was known about like way before Meton, the metonic cycle named for that Greek, it was known in the Chinese, in the Babylonian, then Akkadian, and Hebrew systems, and all around the world. In the 19 years, you end up with 12 years of 12 months and 7 years of 13 months, right? I usually like to present this talk on 12-7 or 7-12. You can see that in the seed of life as well. By the way, the 6 around 1, which is 7, make the 12-spoked wheel. Okay, anyway, let's be here now. We get a 12-note system in Western harmony. Like, it's not enough to play Indian music or music from many different cultures, by the way. Like, you just can't do it on a piano, well. Because of equal temperament and dividing an octave into 12 half steps and other things that I know just sound like jargon if you haven't studied music as well, I really encourage you to. I think it's an important thing to do if you really want to honor these mysteries within like the heart of astrology, because it's what lies within the fabric of the zodiac. But anyway, I just wanted to share that 12-fold division of an octave, it's in nature, it's in physics. The harmonic series leads us there. And many, like Johannes Kepler, who's shown here, found this, have confirmed this through their study of the heavenly spheres, right? And the harmony of the heavenly spheres. I'm just going to highlight the scale that he used for Mercury here. I'm not going to tell you how he got to it, but it is a major scale. And I'm highlighting only 7 of the 8 notes in the major scale because the 8th is the octave. It's like the first. It's the second harmonic of the fundamental tone. Anyway, that's the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Mercury. 7 scales for 7 planets. This is, for me, an even more beautiful image of 7-ness than this septagram or heptagram, which is a beautiful thing. And here we get the 7 visible planetus, the wandering stars, the luminaries, right? The sun and moon, but the visible planets too: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. You can trace one of these stars to find the order of the days of the week. So moon day, Tuesday, Mars's day; Wednesday, Miércoles, Mercury's day; Thursday, Jueves, Jupiter's day; Friday, Viernes, Venus's day; Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right? It's a beautiful thing to see. I learned this from John Martineau in the little book of coincidences, where I've learned so much more. You can work this in another direction to find what is the conductivity of the alchemical metals associated with these planets, like gold with sun and silver with moon and lead with Saturn, tin with Jupiter, etc. In this way, we get the so-called Chaldean order of planetary speed, Saturn being the slowest, then Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Moon, of course, the quickest to make the trip around the zodiac, right? So the septagram, heptagram, the 7s, right? And there's 2 different 7-pointed stars shown here. The black is called the skip 2, where to get from one point to the next, you skip 2 points. See, I'm going to skip 2 to get here and skip 2 to get there. See how that works? This skips 2, skips 2, skips 2, skips 2, skips 2. The red here is a skip 1 septogram, right? So as I'm tracing this, like Venus, Moon, Jupiter, Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Mars. It's like interesting to speak in that order. It reminds me of a very different system. But neither of these septograms shown are regular, meaning equal length lines and equal angles between the 2 points. That's impossible with 7. It's one of the most important and beautiful truths of 7. It's a weird word to use, but some of the number magic traditions call 7 the first version because it's the first of the counting numbers that won't divide the circles 360 degrees equally. You can't draw a regular 7-pointed star. The next is 11, right? Primes these. Now 5 is prime, and so are 2 and 3, but you can divide 360 degrees of a circle by 2. That's 180 the opposition, by 3. That's 120 the trine, by 5. That's 72 degrees the quintile, right? By 6 the sextile, by 4 the square. But once you get to 7, you get this never-ending number that does repeat. And that happens again at 11. And then 13 does a different kind of thing. It is not irrational numbers, to use that term, like pi and phi. They can't be described by a ratio. We approximate pi through 22/7. There's other ratios that get closer, right? But obviously you can express the division of 360 degrees by 13 rationally. It's called 360 over 13. Anyway, it's an interesting beast. I'm tempted to go to the calculator right now, but I actually have a client in a few, so I got to wrap this up. Anyway, 7-pointed stars are beautiful. I challenge you to get to know how to create them. But for me, this might be a more beautiful and elegant and centered expression of the 7. 6 around 1. To make 2 6s for 12. And as we saw before, the 24 is here too. The seed of life. The 12-spoked wheel. 12-spoked wheel of order rolls around and around the sky and never ages. Creation creates in 12s. Happy 12/12, everyone. If you're into that whole Gregorian trip. You can find me at GeminiBrett.com. I hope you will. I hope you'll sign my mailing list, by the way. We're going to do this much more gracefully and with practices in sacred geometry for astrologers, which I intend to teach early in the next calendar year, if you're into the whole Gregorian trip. I do plan to teach sacred harmony for astrologers as a way into harmonic astrology, something that I love. And I will be recreating sacred astronomy for astrologers in the year to come. Sky School. I'm really intent on conveying that wisdom tradition of number in space and time through a system of experiential opportunities. So you're doing astrology not just in the mind, but in the body. For wisdom, of course, is only developed through experience. But hopefully some of the mind play today has at least entertained. Please, if you like the video, hit the like button. It really does help. Not just my ego, but it helps with that too. It helps us play and dance with the algorithm. Share this around if you feel others will like what you've seen here today. And consider joining the School of Astrology's membership community. It's amazing. $16 a month to join Constellations. So GeminiBrett.com/constellations will get you right there. You can just click the community tab at GeminiBrett.com. We have a different teacher every week, or 4 teachers, each presenting once a month. My next class is actually this Saturday on midpoints and harmonic structures. We're going to do that almost exclusively through community play with live chart examples, so we can see how much of it actually sings. I don't really love to just teach or contemplate or create techniques without making sure that they work or at least inspire, which is the great play of it all. All right, friends. Venus, I love that you, like me, love drawing out the flower of life in Metatron's cube. Yeah, it's a very wonderful initiation to take ourselves through. Cool. See you in space, everyone. Thanks for playing along today.